I was so anxious to start playing baseball that I went to Arizona for the last 2 days of spring training. I was just happy to put on spikes and walk out onto a baseball diamond. I found Atlee, played a little catch, and did some running under the blue Arizona sky. Everybody who saw me throw was amazed. I felt great. For the first time in a year, I had no pain in my arm. I told everybody who would listen that I was coming back. I told him I would pitch before the summer was over. It felt even better to arrive in San Francisco and walk into the clubhouse at Candlestick Park, the giant stadium. The guys made me feel welcome immediately. The fielder, Kevin Mitchell, examined my arm, and said, "Man, you look like Jaws took a bite out of you." Mike Krutko, a pitcher, looked over my body and summed it up. "You're certainly no day at the beach." That's the way ball players show their affection. In about 60 seconds, I felt like I'd never been gone. I felt like a living miracle. A thought occurred to me. I've had a year and a half of nearly total rest. Maybe my pitching career will be given an extended life. The next day, I drove down to see Larry Brown, the Giants' physical therapist, to test my strength. He put me through a series of arm exercises. In some areas, he found I had no strength at all. After the workout, Larry said that we had a rough road ahead, even rougher than he'd expected. Unlike the others, he didn't seem impressed by what I'd accomplished. The next morning, we began going through arm exercises just as we had the day before. Just as before, I couldn't do them. "Let's let it go at that," Larry said in a leaden voice. "There's no use in pushing it beyond what you can do. Let's just go out and throw and see how that feels." From what he had seen of my arm, Larry couldn't have been expecting much. He probably thought I'd shot put the ball to him. We got our gloves and went out into the parking lot. I hadn't thrown 3 times before Larry stopped. "How are you doing that?" he asked. His tone was completely changed. "You shouldn't be able to throw that way." It wasn't how hard I was throwing it. It was the fact that my delivery was unchanged. Since I was missing most of a major arm muscle, he assumed that my delivery would be totally different. I walked over to him, my glove under my arm. "Larry, I think you understand where I'm coming from. As far as I'm concerned, this has all been a miracle of God." With that puzzled look on his face, Larry said, "There's no way to explain it." We went back to throwing. When we were done, Larry seemed much more confident. "All right, let's go," he said. "Let's get you stronger and see where that takes us." Every morning, starting about 9 o'clock, I worked with Larry. It was a tough day's work. Oftentimes, others who were getting therapy would stop by and look at what we were doing. I can remember them commenting, "Boy, I'm glad you're not working like that on me, Larry." I'd get home absolutely exhausted. For at least an hour, I'd sink into my chair and say nothing. If anybody disturbed me, I'd be extremely grumpy. By the end of April, I was beginning to worry. I told Janice, "I'm not getting anywhere. I'm on a plateau." My arm had gained strength, my stamina had greatly increased, but I still couldn't throw the ball well. I felt as though my arm were dead. There was no snap to it, no vitality. I tried to fire the ball, but I found nothing there. Larry wasn't too encouraging. He simply pointed out that I was missing a major arm muscle. Maybe I was feeling the medical fact. There was nothing there. After 2 weeks of frustration, my arm began to hurt. I'd make a few pitches and feel the pain build. Larry gave me a couple of days off to see whether that would help. But when I tried to throw again, the pain was terrible. Strength wasn't the problem. I was bench pressing more weight than I had in my whole life. The problem was that I couldn't throw. Instead of the cheery, encouraging comments I'd been hearing from my teammates, I began to get a lot of sad looks. Larry drove up to watch me at the ballpark a couple of times. The first time things went fairly well. The next time my shoulder felt as though someone had hammered a nail into it. I had to quit. 2 days later, I went into the outfield to shag balls and throw them back into the infield. Just lazy, easy tosses, but my shoulder hurt too much to bear. The ball would loop 80 feet or so and bury itself in the grass. I simply could not throw. That evening, I met with Dr. Campbell, and he recommended that I shut down my workouts completely. He suggested no exercises, no nothing for a month. Only time would tell whether I could ever throw again. I was in a fog emotionally. Teammates were feeling sorry for me, and I was feeling sorry for myself. I went up to Atlee one day and said, "If I have to retire, Atlee, will you still be my friend?" "What are you talking about retirement for?" Atlee said. "You're not ready for that." Janice thought I was, though. One day she took a call from the athletic director of a Midwestern college. He said he was interested in discussing a coaching job with me. To Janice, that sounded perfect. We had often talked about how much I'd like coaching at a college level. This way I could retire and go on to a solid job. She wrote down the number and told me about it when I came home. I didn't say much. I put the number aside and said I'd call, but I didn't. I wasn't sure why. I just knew I wasn't ready. Janice reminded me that I was to call back. I put her off. The next day she reminded me again, and I put her off again. The third day she said, "David, I really don't understand why you're not calling him. Why don't you at least talk to the man?" Then suddenly I knew how I felt. I looked at her. "Don't count me out yet," I said. All winter, when I'd been gaining strength day by day, I'd told people that I'd used every last ounce of energy to try to make a comeback. Then, if I'd done everything possible and I was truly unable to play, I could accept the end of my baseball career with grace. I didn't believe I'd reached that point yet. I hadn't used every last ounce of energy. I wasn't done trying.